Chapter 1 High Place. There is a lovely road that runs from Ikopo into the hills. These hills are grass covered and rolling, and they are too lovely to describe. The road climbs 11 kilometers into them to Carisburg, and from there, if there is no mist, you look down on one of the fairest valleys of Africa. About you, there is grass, and you may hear the forlorn crying of the titihoya, one of the beds of the grasslands. Below you is the valley of the Umzungulu, on its journey from the Drankensberg mountains to the sea, and beyond and behind the river, great hill after great hill, and beyond and behind them, the mountains of Ingeli and East Griqualand. The grass is rich and thick. You cannot see the soil. It holds the rain and mist, and they sink slowly into the ground, feeding the streams in every small valley. It is well looked after, and not too many cattle feed upon it. Not too many fires burn it, leaving the soil empty. Up here, on the tops, is a small and lovely valley between the two hills that shelter it. There is a house there, and the flat planted fields. They will tell you that it is one of the finest farms of this countryside. It is called High Place, the farm and dwelling place of Mr. James Jarvis, and it stands high above Ndotsheni and the great valley of Umzumkulu. Jarvis watched the plunging with sad eyes. The hot afternoon sun of October poured down on the fields, and there was no cloud in the sky. Rain, rain. There was no rain. The lamps of the earth turned up hard and unbroken, and the plough rode uselessly over the iron soil. Jarvis, calling his dogs, stated out along the path that led to the tops. Up was the grass, fed by the mist, but below the tops the grass was dry, and the hills of Ndotsheni were red and empty. Something might have been done if the people had only learned how to build walls to save the soil from washing away in the rains, and if they had planted along the lines of the hills. But the hills were steep, and the cattle were weak, so that it was easier to plant from the top down. And the people were uneducated and knew nothing about farming methods. Some people said there must be more education, but a boy with education did not want to work on the farms and went off to the towns to look for the easier occupation with more money. The work was done by old men and women, and when the grown men came back from the mines and the towns, they sat in the sun and drank their liquor and made endless conversation. Jarvis turned these old thoughts over in his mind as he sat on the hilltop. Down in the valley below there was a car going up to his house. He recognized it as a police car from Ikopo, and it would probably be the police captain making his usual daily tour of the district. His wife was coming out of the house to meet the car, and there were two policemen climbing out of it. His wife was pointing up to the tops. He called his dog and set out along the path, and about halfway down to the fields, he met the two police officers. "Well, Captain, have you bought some rain for us?" "No, Mr. Jarvis. I am sorry, but I have bad news for you." "Bad news? Is it my son?" he asked. "Yes, Mr. Jarvis." "Is he dead?" "Yes, Mr. Jarvis." The captain paused. "He was shot dead this afternoon in Johannesburg." "Shot dead? By whom?" "It is suspected by a native housebreaker." "My God," he said, and then, "You didn't tell my wife." "No, Mr. Jarvis. She isn't strong. I don't know how she will stand it." "Mr. Jarvis, I am instructed to offer you as much help as I can. You could take a plane and be in Johannesburg at midnight." Yes, we will take it." In a few minutes they were at the house. "James, what's the matter?" "Some trouble, my dear. Come with me to the office." The captain went to the telephone. He began to talk to the police headquarters about the plane, and he put his hand over his open ear to shut out the sound of the woman crying. Chapter 2. The Story of the Stranger. A young man met them at an airport. Mr. and Mrs. Jovis. Yes, I'm John Harrison, Mary's brother. Mary was their dead son's wife. I don't think you remember me. I was only a child when you saw me last. Let me carry your things. I've a car here for you. Mary and the children are at my mother's, and we're expecting you both to stay with us. In the car, he said to them, Mr. Jovis, Otto was the finest man I've ever knew. How is Mary? She's suffering from the shock, Mr. Jovis, but she's very brave. And the children, they've taken it very badly, Mr. Jovis, and that has given Mary something to occupy herself. John Harrison told Jarvis all that he knew about the crime. He told him too of the essay his son Otto had been writing just before he was killed on. The truth about the native crime. My son, I didn't see eye to eye on the native question, said Jarvis. But I like to see what he wrote. My father, and I don't see eye to eye on the native question either, Mr. Jarvis, and said John Harrison. You know, there was no one in South Africa who thought so deeply about it, and no one who thought so clearly as Otto did. And what else is there to think deeply and clearly about in South Africa? He used to say. Later that evening, John's father told Jarvis how the messages had poured into the house. Messages from every kind of persons, he said, from the bishop and from white politicians and from colored people and Indians and Jews. There was talk of getting him to stand at next elections as representative for the natives. I didn't know that. Yes, he was always speaking here and there, native crime and more native schools and hospitals. Jarvis filled his pipe slowly and listened to the story of his son, to the story of a stranger. I warned him once, said Harrison, that he would lose his business with the Europeans, and told him there was Mary to consider. I've spoken to Mary. He said to me, she and I agree that it's more important to speak the truth than to make money. Jarvis did not speak, for this boy of his hand had gone journeying in strange waters, further than his parents had known. Or perhaps his mother knew it. Would not surprise him if the mother knew. Soon afterwards, they said good night, and Jarvis went up to the bed and told his wife all Harrison had told him. It makes me proud, she whispered. But you always knew he was like that. Yes, I knew it's easier for Mother James. I suppose so. It was a good life he led. I'm sorry I didn't understand it. Then he said in a whisper, I didn't know it would ever be so important to understand it. There's one thing I don't understand. Why it should have happened to him. Chapter 3. It is not acceptable. Jarvis sat in the chair of his son, in his son's study. On the table were papers in his son's handwriting. They were obviously part of some large whole, for the first line was the end of the sentence and the last line was the sentence unfinished, was acceptable. What we did when we came to South Africa was acceptable. It was acceptable to develop our great resources with the aid of what labor we could find. It was acceptable to use unskilled men for unskilled work. But it is not acceptable to keep a man unskilled for the sake of unskilled work. It was acceptable when they discovered gold to bring labor to the mines. It was acceptable to build compounds and to keep women and children away from the towns. But in the light of what we know now, it is no longer acceptable. It is not acceptable for us to go on destroying family life when we know that we are destroying it. It is not acceptable to develop any resources if they
can be developed only by a policy of keeping labor poor. It is not acceptable to add to one's possessions if this can only be done at the cost of other men. It was acceptable to leave native education to those who wanted to develop it. It was acceptable to doubt its benefit, but it no longer acceptable to light of what we know. There is now a large native population in the town. Society must educate its children so that they grow up to obey the society's laws and realize the aims and purposes of the society. There is no other way that it can be done. It was acceptable to allow the destruction of the tribal system that prevented the growth of the country. But it is not acceptable to watch its destruction and to replace it by nothing, so that a whole people goes bad and physically and morally. The old tribal system was, for all its violence and strange sets of beliefs, a moral system. Our natives today produce criminals not because it is their nature to do so, but because their simple system of order and tradition has been destroyed. It was destroyed by our own civilization. Our civilization has therefore an unavoidable duty to set up another system of order and tradition. It is time. And there the paper and the page ended. Jervis searched among the things on the table, but he could find nothing more. He sat smoking his pipe and was lost in thought. Unasked, unwanted, the picture of the small boy came to his mind, and the small boy at the high place. Chapter 4. The seventh boy recovers. The funeral was over. You are welcome to stay here, Jervis, said Harrison, as long as you are wanted in Johannesburg. What did the police say, if I may ask? They are still waiting for the seventh boy to recover. They have hopes that he recognizes one of them. They hope too that someone may have seen them getting away. I hope to God they get them and hang them all. Pardon me, Jervis. I know exactly what you mean. We are not safe, Jervis. I don't even know that hanging them will make us safe. Sometimes I think the problem has got beyond us. I know what you mean by myself. Perhaps it's too soon to think about it. I know what you mean. I understand that side of it isn't the side you feel about the most. You are right. It's not that side of it that seems important. Not yet, anyway, but I realize there is another side to it. We have been demanding more police. I'm not a native hater, Jervis. I try to give them decent wages and a clean room and some time off. Our servants stay with us for years, but natives as a whole are getting out of control. They've even started trade unions. They are threatening to strike here in the mines for 10 shillings a day. They get about 3 shillings now, and some of them, the mines are near closing down. They live in a decent compound. Some of the latest compounds I wouldn't mind living in myself. They get good food, far better than they will ever get at home, free medical attention, and God knows what. I tell you, Jarvis, if mining costs go up much more than there won't be any mines. And where will South Africa be then? And where would natives be themselves? They'd die by the thousands of lack of food. I tell you, there wouldn't be any South Africa at all if it weren't for the mines. There was silence for the time, and then Jarvis said, Harrison, I'm going to bed. It's done me good to listen to you. I haven't done much talking myself. It's not because I am not interested. I'm sure you understand. But I couldn't have wished that he was here tonight, that I could have heard him argue with you. I didn't argue with him, said Harrison, but I had a great respect for anything that he said. The next morning, Harrison called Jarvis early. The police have just telephoned Jarvis. The boy recovered consciousness this morning. He says there were 3 right enough, and he is sure that the one that knocked him out was an old garden boy of your son's. The police are after him now. They certainly seem to be moving. Chapter 5. The Court. At the head of the court is a high seat where the judge sits. The judge does not make the law. It is the people that make the law. It is the duty of the judge to do justice, but it is only the people that can be just. In South Africa, men are proud of their judges because they cannot be bought. Even the black men have faith in them, though they do not always have faith in the law. In a land of fear, this honesty is like a lamp set upon a stand, giving light to all that are in the house. They call for silence in the court, and the people stand, and the judge enter. The court is begun. The three that are to be charged came in: Absalom Kumalo, Matthew Kumalo, and John Hannes Pafuri. The lawyer for the government speaks for a long time and tells the court the whole story of the crime. And Absalom Kumalo is still silent, but the other two look hurt and shocked to think such things are said. "Why did you carry this gun?" asked the lawyer. It was to frighten the servant of the house," says Absalom. "If this gun is frightening people, why must it be loaded?" But the boy does not answer. Questions, questions, questions. And later I was afraid. I never meant to shoot him. And then more questions. Chapter 6. Gold in Rust. There is a little attention being paid to the trial of those accused of the murder of the author Jovis of Parkworld. For gold has been discovered. More gold. Rich gold in a little place called Rust. Yesterday it was quite unknown. Today it is one of the famous places of the world. The gold is as rich as any gold that has ever been discovered in South Africa, as rich as anything in Johannesburg. Men are saying that a new Johannesburg will rise there, a great city of tall buildings and busy streets. Men that were sad because the gold in Johannesburg could not last forever are happy and excited. There is excitement in Johannesburg. Men go mad for the shares are climbing in price to heights that are beyond expectation. Gold, gold, gold. The country is going to be rich again. Shares are up from 20 shillings to 100 shillings. Think of it. Thank God for it. There are people, it is true, who are not very thankful, but it must be admitted that they hold no shares at all. Some of these people are saying it would be nice if these shares could have stayed at 20 shillings, and the other 8 shillings have been used to save the soil of the country, to build boys club and girls club, and to have more hospitals and pay more to the mines. Well, say those who have the shares. Anyone can see that this thinking is confused because of the price of shares has really nothing to do with the question of wages at all. And perhaps the great city will grow up at Rust as second Johannesburg, but money is not something to go mad about, and no second Johannesburg is needed upon the earth. One is enough. Chapter 7. The heaviest thing. Jovis had reached the last paragraphs of another of his son's essays, which the younger Harrison had bought for him to read. Therefore, I shall give myself, my time, my energy, my talents to the service of South Africa. I shall no longer ask myself if this or that is adventurous, but only if it is right. I shall do this, not because I am noble or kind, but because life slips away and because I need for the rest of my journey a compass that will not lie. There was a knock at the kitchen door, and he went out to find a native priest standing there. The priest was old, and his black clothes were green with age, and his collar was brown with age. He took off his hat, showing the whiteness of his head, and he looked afraid, and he was trembling. "Good morning, Umfundisi," said Jovis in Zulu. The priest answered in the trembling voice, "Sir," and to Jovis' surprise, he sat down on the slowest steep step as though he were ill or hungry. "Are you ill, Mfundisi? Do you wish water or food?" "No, sir, I shall recover." Slowly the old priest stood up. "You are from Dojeni, sir," he said. "Yes, I come from Dojeni, but you are in fear of me, and I do not know what it is. It is true, sir. It is very heavy. It is the heaviest thing of all my years. Tell me, and said Jervis, it will help you. Then said the old man, this thing that is the heaviest thing of all my years is the heaviest thing of all your years too. Jervis looked at him. You can mean only one thing, he said. You can mean only one thing. It was my son that killed your son, said old man. So they were silent. I have heard you. I understand what I did not understand. There is no anger in me. I have seen you riding past Ndojeni, say past the church where I work. Perhaps you saw the boy also, said Jervis. He too used to ride past Ndojeni on red horse with white face, and he carried wooden guns. Here is here in his belt as small boys do. I remember, sir. There was brightness in him. Yes, yes, said Jervis. There was brightness in him. Again they were silent. The old man started to walk down the path to the back gate. As he turned to close it, he saw that Jervis had followed him, and he bowed to him. Go well, Umfundi, said Jervis. Stay well, sir. As Jervis returned to the house, his wife came to meet him. Why are you upset, James? She asked. Something that came out of the past, he said. You know how it comes suddenly. She was satisfied and said, I know. She held his arm more closely.
Chapter 8. The Great Bull Voice. The Great Bull Voice is speaking there in the square. There are many policemen there, both white and blacks, to keep order, because they are those who can be moved by sound of the voice alone. For the voice has magic in it, it has threatened in it, and it is a true Africa itself where in it. The sound of the lion thunders in it over the black mountains. We do not ask for what cannot be given, says John Kumal. We ask only for our share of what is produced by our labor. New gold has been found, and South Africa is rich again. This gold will stay in the depths of the earth if we do not dig it out. I do not say it is our gold. I say only that we get our share in it. It is the gold of the whole people, the white and the black and the colored. But who will get most of the gold? A wave of the excitement passes through the crowd. The policemen stand ready except those who have heard this before. For they know that this Kumalo goes so far no further. What if this voice should say words that it speaks already in private? Should rise and not fall again? Should rise and rise and rise, and the people rise with it, should excite them with thoughts of power and possession. It will not be hard to do. It does not need a brain to think such words, but the man is afraid, and the deep voice dies down, and the people come to themselves again. But when the voice speaks again, the crowd becomes excited again, and through a great wind were blowing through it. Here is the moment, John Kumalo, for the great voice to reach even to the gates of heaven. But he knows the great power that he has, the power of which he is afraid. And the voice dies away, as thunder dies away over the mountains, and slips away quietly on the wind. There were those who knew that to go to prison would bring greatness to them. There are those who would go to prison not caring if it brought greatness or not. But John Kumalo is not one of them. There is no greatness in prison. The time are anxious. There can be no doubt about it that the strike has come and gone. It never went beyond the mines. The worst trouble was at the place where the police were called in to drive the black mines into the mines. There was fighting, and 3 of the black miners were killed. But all is quiet. They report all is quiet. In the empty pot there is water that moves endlessly against the stone walls. In the dark and the silent forest there is a leaf that falls. Nothing is ever quiet except for fools. Chapter 9. Another murder. Miss Litebe called Gertrude into the house. I have done my best to understand you, my daughter, but I do not succeed in it. I did no wrong. I did not say you did wrong, but you do not understand this house. You do not understand the people that live in it. Gertrude looked angry. I do not understand it, she said. Then why do you speak with such people, my daughter? I did not know they were not decent people. Do you not hear the way they speak, the way they laugh? Do you not hear them laugh lazily and carelessly? I did not know it was wrong. I did not say it was wrong. It is lazy and careless. The way they speak and laugh. Are you not trying to be a good woman? Then such people will not help you. Your brother the Umfundiso has surely suffered enough. He has suffered. Then do not make him suffer further, my daughter. I shall be glad to leave this place. Gertrude said, I do not know what to do in this place. It is not this place alone, said Miss Litebe. Even in Dojane, you will find those who are ready to laugh and speak carelessly. It is this place, said Gertrude. I have known nothing but trouble in this Johannesburg. I shall be glad to be gone. It will not be long before you go, for the case will finish tomorrow. There was a knock at the door, and the woman neighbor came in. There is a bad thing in the news, she said. She showed the oldest woman. Another murder in city, European shot and dead by native housebreaker. They were shocked. It is a hard thing that this should happen. At this moment, said the woman. Just when the case is finished, Miss Litebe heard the sound of the gate and threw the paper under a chair. It was Kumalo and the girl. The girl was holding his arm, for he was weak in these days. He guided him to his room, and they were hardly gone before Msimang entered. His eyes fell on the paper at once. Has he seen it? He asked Umfundisi. No, Umfundisi. It is not hard thing that this should happen at the moment. This judge is a great judge, said Msimang, but it is a hard thing, as you say. Our friend likes to read the paper. What shall we do? There is no other paper here, said Miss Litebe. But when he goes to eat at the mission house, he will see it. That is why I came, said Msimang. Mother, could we not eat here tonight? That is a small thing to ask. There is food enough. Do it is simple. Indeed, mother, you are always our helper. For what else are we born? She said. So they hid the newspaper and they all ate at Miss Litebe. Chapter 10. The Judgment. The people stand when the great judge comes into the court. They stand more seriously today, for this is the day of the judgment. The judge sits, and then the people, and then the three accused are brought from the place under the court. I have given long thought and consideration to this case, says the judge. I have listened carefully to all evidence that has been brought forward and have tested it piece by piece, very carefully. The judge goes through the evidence as to whether it was Matthew Kumalo or John Hannes Bafure who were with Absalom Kumalo when he shot Otto Jovis. And at last, I have come to the conclusion that we cannot be certain that the second or third men are guilty, and the charges against them will therefore be dropped. The accused Absalom Kumalo makes no sign. He does not even look at the two who are now free, but Pafuru looks about as though he would say, this is the right, this is just. There remains the case against the first accused, says the judge, and he admits freely that he shot Otto Jovis. His lawyer draws attention to his youth and to the terrible effect of the great and evil city on the character of the simple tribal boy. He has told us of the disaster that has happened to our native tribal society, and of the responsibility of the white society for this disaster. But even if this is true, there is nevertheless a law. The judges must carry out the law. A judge may not fail to carry out the law because the society is imperfect. If the law is the law of the society that came to feel to be unfair, it is the law and the society that must be charged. Again, the careful and detailed review of the evidence, this time about Absalom Kumal. This young man goes to a house with the intention of breaking and stealing. He takes with him a loaded gun. He says that it was not his intention to kill. Why then must it be loaded? He says he had no intention to kill, and that he fired the gun out of fear. But it is true that he took with him a weapon that the use of which might well result in the death of any man who got in the way of his stealing. The law on this point and so on until the dead end. They are silent in the court. The judge speaks. This court finds you guilty, Absalom Kumal, of the murder of author Terlene Jarvis. Have you anything to say before I sentence you? I have only this to say, that I killed this man, but I did not mean to kill him, only I was afraid. There are silence in the court. I sentence you, Absalom Kumalo, to be hanged by the neck until you are dead, and may the Lord forgive you. The judge rises and the people rise, but not all is silent. The guilty one falls to the floor crying, and there is a woman screaming and an old man crying, "Oh God, oh God." No one calls for silence, though the judge is not quite gone. For who can stop their heart from breaking? They come out of the court, the white on one side, the black on the other side, according to the custom. But Father Vincent and the young white men break the custom, and Simango help the old and broken man. It is not often that such a custom is broken. It is only when there is a deep experience that such a custom is broken. Chapter 11. Brother shuts out brother. They passed again through the great gate in the high wall. Father Vincent and Kumalo and Gertrude and the girl Absalom was to marry Simang. The boy and girl greeted each other like strangers, each giving hands without life, to be held loosely, so that the hands fell apart easily. And Kumalo said desperately to his son, "Are you in the health?" And the boy answered, "I am greatly." "Are you in the health, my father?" So Kumalo said, "I am greatly." He searched for other things to say, but he could not find them. Then Father Vincent married Absalom and the girl. After it was done, the priest and the wife Gertrude left the father and son, and Kumalo said to him, "I am glad you are married." "I am also glad, my father. I shall care for your child and my son. And you will tell my mother and that I remember her." "Yes, indeed, I shall tell her." "When does my father return to Ndochen?" "Tomorrow, my son." "Tomorrow?" "Yes, tomorrow." At those words, the boy fell on the floor and began to cry, for a boy is afraid of death. Knelt by his son. "Be of courage, my son." "I am afraid," he cried. "I am afraid." The prison guard came in and said, "Old man, you must go now." "My son, I must go now." He stood up, but the boy caught his father by the knees and cried out to him, "You must not leave me. You must not leave me." He broke out again into the terrible crying. The prison guard said again, "Old man, you must go now." And Kumalo said to Absalom, "Stay well, my son." But the boy did not hear him. And so they went their own ways. Heavy with grief, Kumalo left him and went out to gate in the wall where the others were waiting. And the girl came to him and said shyly, but with a smile, "Umfundisi." "Yes, my child." "Am I your daughter now?" "It is true," he said. Kumalo went to see his brother. "I am coming to say farewell to you, my brother." Well. You are returning to Ndochen. You have been a long time away, my brother, and your wife will be glad to see you when you are leaving. We leave tomorrow at 9 o'clock. So Gertrude is going with you. and her child. You are doing a good thing, my brother. Johannesburg is not a place for a woman alone. I am taking another child also, said Kumal, the wife of my son, and she too is with child. Well, I have heard of it, said John Kumal. That is another good thing you are doing. My brother, there is a matter that must be spoken between us. It is as you wish, my brother. I have not come here to criticize you. Criticize me? Why should you criticize me? There was a case and a judge. That is not for you or me or any other person. I do not say that I should criticize you. And as you say, there is a case and a judge. There is also a great judge, but of him I do not speak. But there is a quite another matter. Well, what is this matter? One thing is to greet you before I go, but I could not greet you and say nothing. You have seen how it is with my son. He left his home and he was eaten up. What of your own son? He also has left his home. I am thinking about this matter, said John Kumalo. When this trouble is finished, I shall bring him back here. He laughed his big laugh. I cannot leave all the kindness to you, my brother. And there is one thing, said Kumalo. You are my oldest brother. Speak what you wish. Your politics, my brother. Where are they taking you? My politics, my brother, are my own. I do not speak to you about your religion. You said speak what you wish. Well, I did say that it. But I know what I am fighting for. You have read history. History teaches that men who do not work cannot be kept down forever. If they will stand together, who will stand against them? You mean if they strike? Yes, I mean that. But the last strike was not successful. John Kumalo stood on his feet and his voice was low and hard. Look what they did to us, he said. They forced us into their mines as though we were slaves. Have we no right to keep back our labor? Do you hate the white man, my brother? John Kumalo looked at him carefully. I hate no man, he said. I hate only injustice. I have heard that you have said dangerous things here in this shop. I have heard that they were watching you. I say this because you are my brother. Have no doubt it is fear in his eyes. The big man looks like a boy that is caught. In this shop, who would know that what is said in this shop? For all his wish to forgive, Kumalo's desire to hate was stronger, so strong that he half wanted to lie. He gave in to this desire and lied. I have heard, he said, that a man might have been sent to this shop to deceive you. As a friend, the big man wiped his face again. You heard that? And Kumalo ashamed had to say, I heard it. What a friend, said the big man. What a friend? And Kumalo cried at him out of his suffering. My son had two such friends. The big man looked at him and understood. Hour of my shop. He shouted, out of my shop. He kicked over the table and came. Ed Kumalo saw that the old man had to step out of the door into the street, and the door was shut against him. Out there in the street, he was ashamed. He had come to tell his brother that power makes you do bad things, that a man who fights for justice must himself be clean, that love is greater than force, and none of these things had he done. God forgive me, he said. He turned to the door, but it was locked. Brother had shut out brother. The people were watching, so he walked away in his unhappiness. Simangu gave the party at Miss Litebe that evening. It was not a happy party, but there was plenty of food and there was some sad pleasure in it. Simangu made a speech about his brother's priest Kumalo and Miss Litebe kindness to them all. Kumalo made a speech too, but it was weak and uncertain, for the lie and the quarrel were in his mind. But he thanked Simangu and Miss Litebe for all the kindness. Then Simangu told them that he had news for them. He was retiring into the religious community and would give up the world and all possession. They finished with prayers, and afterwards Simangu said to Kumalo, I am giving up all my position, but I have saved a little money and I have permission from the church to give you this to you, to help you with all the money you have spent in Johannesburg and all your duties. He put a post office book into Khumalo's hand. Khumalo said, "In all my days I have known no one as you are." And Msimangu said sharply, "I am only a weak man, and I ask that you will pray for me in this new thing I am about to do." "I shall pray for you, morning and evening and all my days. Good night, brother." "Good night, Msimangu, friend of friends, and may God watch over you always, and you also." Khumalo watched him go down the street. In the morning, he rose early. He opened the door quietly and shook the girl gently. "It is time for us to go," he said. "I shall not be long," she said. He smiled at the Enganes Ndojeni. He said, "Tomorrow it is Ndojeni." He opened Gertrude's door, but Gertrude was gone. The little boy was there. The red dress he had bought her was there, but Gertrude was gone. That is all you need to know about Book 2. To find Book 1, go to the playlist of the Cry Beloved or the playlist of the audiobook. You will find it here in this channel, and don't forget to subscribe.